Hot take. A lot of RAG teams buy a GPU too early, then discover the real bottleneck was their latency budget, not raw compute.
Exactly. CPU versus GPU for embeddings and rerankers is not a prestige choice. It is a traffic pattern choice. The winning setup depends on how many texts you process at once, how fast you must answer, and where the expensive model actually sits in your pipeline.
So this is not which chip is faster. It is which tool fits retrieval without blowing up cost or user experience.
Right. Embeddings and rerankers behave differently. Embeddings often happen in bulk during indexing or in tiny bursts for user queries. Rerankers usually sit on the critical path after retrieval, where every extra millisecond is visible.
And that creates the first power shift. If you are indexing documents overnight, who cares if a CPU takes longer?
In that case, CPU is often good enough. If you ingest 10,000 docs a day, generate embeddings in background jobs, and only embed one query at a time online, a decent CPU can be perfectly fine. You save money, simplify deployment, and avoid optimizing for a scale you do not have yet.
Give me a concrete case, because this is where people get seduced by the hardware story.
Imagine an internal support bot for a 50-person company. You reindex the knowledge base every night. During the day, maybe 20 employees ask occasional questions. Query embeddings are tiny workloads. A CPU can handle that comfortably. And if you only re-rank the top 5 or 10 passages, CPU latency may still stay acceptable.
But the minute traffic rises, the story changes fast, right?
Very fast. GPUs matter most when you can feed them batches. If requests arrive steadily and you can process many texts together, throughput jumps. That changes cost per document and often makes re-ranking practical at a quality level that felt too slow on CPU.
So, batch size is not a footnote. It is the hinge.
Yes, small batches favor simplicity. Large batches unlock GPU economics. A single query embedding at a time may not justify a GPU, but hundreds of chunks per second during indexing or many re-ranker inputs across concurrent users can swing the math hard toward GPU.
And here is the trap. Teams hear throughput and forget latency. Users do not care that your box is efficient if each answer feels late.
That is the second big idea. Throughput and latency are related, but not identical. A GPU can process more total work, but if you wait to form batches, you may add queuing delay. If your app promises snappy chat responses, aggressive batching can actually hurt the thing users notice most.
Let us make that real. Say I run a customer-facing RAG app, and I need answers to feel instant.
Then, you set a latency target first. Suppose your total retrieval plus generation budget is tight. Maybe you can afford only a small slice for embedding and re-ranking. In that world, a small CPU re-ranker on a handful of candidates might beat a GPU system that waits around to fill batches. The slower chip can deliver the faster experience if the pipeline is shaped better.
That is wonderfully annoying, because it means the technically stronger machine can produce the weaker product.
Exactly. For low concurrency, the simplest path often wins. For high concurrency, the stronger machine starts dominating, because there is always enough work queued to keep it busy without artificial waiting.
Where do re-rankers specifically tip the scale harder than embeddings?
Usually, when candidate counts rise, query embedding is one vector. Re-ranking means scoring many query document pairs. If you retrieve 20, 50, or 100 candidates per request, that workload expands quickly. On CPU, that can become the new bottleneck even if vector search itself is cheap. On GPU, higher parallelism can turn re-ranking from a luxury into a default step.
So, the strategic consequence is quality. The team with enough throughput can afford a better second pass, and the team without it may have to trust weaker first pass retrieval.
Yes, and that affects answer accuracy, citation quality, and hallucination control. Here is a practical example. A legal research tool indexes a large archive in bulk and serves many analysts at once. During business hours, each query pulls 50 likely passages, then re-ranks them before sending context to the generator. That is where GPU throughput can change the trade-off. It lets you keep richer candidate sets and still hit response targets.
While the smaller team with one assistant bot and low traffic might be wasting money copying that architecture.
Correct. They may be better off with CPU embeddings, lighter re-ranking, and tighter retrieval limits, not because GPUs are bad, but because unused parallelism is just idle budget.
How should builders decide without disappearing into benchmark spreadsheets?
Use 3 questions. First, what is your real concurrency, one request at a time or many? Second, what is your latency target for the whole user experience? Third, how many texts do you process per request and per hour, especially in re-ranking and indexing? Those answers will usually point you in the right direction faster than any benchmark chart.
And if the answers are mixed, low traffic today, but maybe a big rollout in 2 months.
Design for migration, not ideology. Start with CPU, if it meets current latency and cost goals. Measure queuing, tail latency, and how often re-ranking gets trimmed for speed. Move to GPU when throughput limits force you to shrink batches, skip quality steps, or miss targets under real concurrency.
So the winners are not the teams with the flashiest hardware. They are the ones who know when hardware changes the product and when it only changes the invoice.
That is the whole game. CPU is good enough when workloads are small, bursty, or offline. GPU changes the trade-off when batchable volume and concurrency are high enough to unlock much more throughput without wrecking latency.
And the hidden variable tying it together is not clock speed. It is how your retrieval pipeline breathes under load.
Exactly. In RAG, the smart question is not CPU or GPU. It is this: when does more throughput buy better answers, and when does it just buy heat?